Okay, looks like we're streaming now.
I hear echo. It's okay?
We should be good now. So we're definitely streaming on YouTube. And yeah, let me go ahead and start.
Okay, let's go.
Hello and welcome to Flying High with Flutter. I'm your host, Alan Weiba, and today I'm with of course, another very special guest. It is Aleksandr Denisov. I hope I said that at least somewhat properly. He is a Flutter developer and GDE in Flutter and Dart, located in Russia. And
Yes.
one of our previous episodes, if I remember correctly, is Aleandros said that he learned how to use Canvas by looking at some of your projects. And so, yeah, I wanted to bring you on to talk a little bit more about Canvas, right? So I know you said, we talked a little bit before the show, you said that maybe you're not a super expert in Canvas and in Custom Painter, but at least you could share with us your knowledge about it because you said you did put on some workshops, right? So maybe we start off with kind of who you are. So who are you? Or how can you introduce yourself?
Okay. Uh, I'm from Russia. You probably heard about such a country. uh, we have a lot of really nice places here where you can travel. I really love traveling. And when the borders were closed because of the COVID, I began a lot of travel around the country. And it turns out that we have so many places. But it's enough about country. Let's talk about myself. I am development lead of one large Flutter project. Now there are already more than 30 Flutter developers. I,
Developers on one project. How do you guys keep? I mean, because there must be a lot of things churning, right? Because every time you write Flutter and then you do a format, everything changes, right? So how do you guys? It must be like billions of lines being changed every day, every time you write code, no?
Aaron, I hear myself. It's okay. It's me difficult to talk when I hear me again. Can you do something with it?
I don't think I can do something over here that should be on your own setup. Or are you playing the live stream right now? You might need to cut. You might need to
Oh
cut.
yes,
Turn off your YouTube, then you should be good.
up, up. Okay. Now can you hear me?
Fine.
Okay, good. It's okay now. It's okay. Yes, there are already more than 30 Flutter developers in the team. Yes. But really, I can say that I'm Flutter developer because I develop or fix something in our app every day, not management only. And could you repeat your question because it was difficult to understand because I had a problem with noises.
I'm just thinking like every time I work with Flutter, and even though I change a couple of things, maybe I add just one more widget in, and I do a format, a lot of lines end up changing, right? Because of the
Yes.
formatting. So there must be billions of lines being changed in your application every day, no?
Yes, it's really too hard to manage because every day I have maybe 100 or more pull requests, and we are trying to work with different part of code, not due to not give a lot of conflicts, but sometimes you need to resolve your conflicts uh, twice or more in the day because sometimes there are a lot of conflicts. But it's a price for speed and really big project. We have to finalize our project and uh, to the to the date, and that's why we have to work with a big team, because it's a really, really big application.
Application is it exactly that it has to be so big? I mean, is there just a lot of functions, or is it just a very complicated UI? What makes it such a big application?
This is an application that will work with streaming, video streaming, and will work on 6 platform at once. I mean, it will be iOS, Android, web, Android TV, Apple TV, and some kind of embedded Linux. iOS and Android supported by Flutter, web already supported as well. Linux supported, partially supported, but for example, Android TV is not officially supported, but there is almost okay everything except support of remote control. But for example, Apple TV is not supported at all. For example, to launch a Flutter application on Apple TV, it was necessary to fork Flutter engine and make some changes there. But now it's work on Apple TV as well.
So
It's a
you
really
actually
cool
got,
project.
so you actually have Flutter running on Apple TV right now?
Yes.
Have you guys tried to commit that back to the Flutter team? Because there's a lot of people who are actually looking for that.
To be honest, we are working with already prepared open source solution for Apple TV. We're working with it. You can find it in GitHub, or I can provide the link after the session. And there are details about how to launch, how to build your custom engine, and how to launch Flutter application Apple TV with details. And there is my name as well. I will give you a link later.
Yeah, please. I'm sure. I mean, I see that issue before because I was also interested because I have one Apple TV over here, and I love working with Flutter, obviously. And so I am interested to build an Apple TV app at some point because, yeah, why not? I mean, my Apple TV just sits there. I just watch YouTube on it every day. I don't do anything else. So it would be nice to have an application on there. Because I'm actually kind of curious about like how hard is it to work with that? Because with Apple TV, you have the remote and you swipe, right?
Yes, it was
Is
interesting. It was interesting, and we implemented it with separate platform channel. It means we are working with swipes on platform side and send the stream of these events swipe to the Flutter side, and there we have some kind of singleton gesture handler that manage these swipes and check how it works, and based on these swipes generate keyboard events that I mean left, right, up, down, that control focus of application. I have in my repo. I have example project for TV. It's possible to check later. I will give the link as well because it's my GitHub. I think you could provide the link onto my GitHub after the session.
Yeah, I would love to. What's actually your GitHub link, or what's your GitHub handle?
Denisov, I can write probably.
Yeah, if you can type it to the chat, then I'll definitely paste it right in there. Now you got me excited. I think I want to start playing with it this weekend.
Okay, I'm trying to find where I can write it. Chat. Okay, got it. This is my handle. Okay, well, let's back to the story about project. I think not sure that anybody else is developing something similar in terms of the size of the team, complexity of the project, or the number of supported platforms. I think is really really nice task, and it will be great to finish it. And
Apple TV, Android TV, which
yes,
I'm guessing you're probably building upon. Are you actually building upon similar ideas of Apple TV? Because I think some Android TVs also have some type of remote, right? Where you press, but it's actually usually it's pressing arrow buttons. So it should be
yes.
similar API, right? Okay. And of course,
Android TV is working with raw keyboard listener and working with remote control like with the usual keyboard, and it's quite easy to support it. You just listen the keyboard and move the focus uh, with with swipes. It's a bit more difficult. I prepared a talk to the conference, Flutter for TV, how it works, and gave this talk in a conference in Russia, in Moscow, Mobius. Probably heard about this conference, probably not. But maybe and it was in Russian, of course, but probably I will repeat this talk somewhere else in English. Uh, I feel called for papers to some part of conference, probably somewhere I will repeat this talk. I'll recommend to hear because it's really interesting how to how is work with TV, because it's not very off. This is not very often case, but sometimes you can add a lot of platforms to supported platform for your application. For example, if before you could share your code base between two platforms, between iOS and Android. Currently, you can share code between three platforms. I mean, iOS, Android, and web. And probably very soon, it will be 6 platform with desktop. And let's imagine how attractive it looks from a management point of view. But if you're working with TV as well, you can use one code base for 6, 7, 8 platforms, where if you worked before with native applications and had to work with 6 different development teams, now you can use only one team. It's really great with Flutter.
yeah. How did you guys? So you developed this all by yourself, right? How did you manage to port the Flutter platform to like Apple TV, Android TV, and so forth? Like, did you just have to just dig into the code, or was there a blog post that you followed, or how did you get the knowledge to do this kind of thing?
So sorry, something went wrong with sound. Could you repeat?
To say is what I want to ask is like, I'm sure there's lots of people who are also interested in how can I port Flutter to work on X? Because
Yes,
maybe they are really interested, but
agree. Absolutely
how do
agree.
you actually learn how to do that? How did you guys learn how to do that?
How we learned to do it? Or-
Yeah, how did you learn how to port the Flutter engine, right? Because Flutter
ah,
was never supported on, it's never supported on as a target, right? It's never supported on Apple TV, but you guys
no,
got it to work, right?
it's quite easy. On the Flutter.dev website, there is some kind of manual how you can build your own custom engine if you want to make some changes or if you want to contribute to Flutter engine. You should check it on your own laptop. That's why there is a manual how to do it. You need to get source code, build them, and you can set during Flutter build command, set your own engine instead of original, and you can do some changes there. And to run it on Apple TV, it was necessary to make some changes because Apple TV is another operation system. iPhone has iOS, Apple TV, tvOS, and Flutter doesn't work with tvOS. And it was necessary just tell to Flutter you can work with tvOS. And just change some using of API because in general tvOS very similar with iOS, and it's it was a bit complicated, but not very complicated. It's just necessary to remember C++ and Swift.
Just worked on porting the engine from where it was originally to adding tvOS.
I can't say exactly because that's engine. This is a long story because that engine that we are using right now wasn't ported by ourselves from beginning. We just helped ourselves. But when I did experiments with it, I did my own version of Flutter engine, and I did it by myself. I was alone, and I launched it. But there were not perfect way, and the way that we are choosing right now it's better, I suppose. But it was I spent to this probably 1 week with half to investigation and working.
Sounds pretty exciting. Did you actually document your journey, or this was just all in-house just for this client? Or it's your employer, right? So this is all in-house for your employer. And I'm just kind of curious if you guys like wrote this stuff down and kind of talked about the journey, because I'm sure that's a very interesting process of, how do I do this and how do I do that and these kind of things. Did you document any of this?
It's not necessary because that's all open source, open sourced fork of Flutter engine that I will provide you a bit later, that everybody can use, already documented. And or do you mean how I did investigation, how I how I were thinking and so on?
Exactly. That's the latter part. How did you investigate? How did you think about this? How did you find out what the things you needed to do? To me, that's the most interesting part, right? Because I know it's possible to port things to different places because obviously Toyota's doing this for their infotainment system. And I know that there's some people doing this in other embedded Linux systems. So I am curious about like how can I do something like this? Like if I have some embedded Linux system with a UI, how can I port the engine, or do I even need to port it, right? Because I guess if the CPU architecture is like a desktop base, then maybe I could just run Linux directly, right?
Yes. Well, it's a good idea. I suppose it's necessary to write an article about it and publish it. Probably it will be interesting.
If you ever publish it, make sure you let me know. I would love to read it because that's definitely up my alley. I had no idea that you did something like this. I wish you would have told me sooner. I would have had more questions about this. But yeah, that's pretty exciting. Um, Actually, I kind of want to know more about you, right? So, like, what is your background? Like, how did you get started into programming to begin with?
Uh, yes. How? Uh, to be honest, I knew that I would be a software engineer since my childhood. It's true. As I remember, I saw I saw my first IBM PC at my father's work and fell in love with wow this computer. I was in primary school then. In that time, it was almost impossible to have a computer at home. It was Soviet Union time, and when I saw it, I immediately realized that this was my future. And since that moment, I moved towards to this goal and studied to be a mathematician and software engineer. And if if what about language with which I working before Flutter?
So what was like, I think a lot of people, so the best part about Flutter is that I think it's definitely one of the more easier languages to learn, right? And the fact that it's very visual is more easy for people to pick up because it's like, okay, I can see what I'm doing, right? If you're programming in C, you can't
Yes.
really see the things that you're doing. You can't see a loop unless you print it out. If you do see out, then you could see it. But for Flutter, nearly everything you do, you could see. So there's a lot more people coming to Flutter who have basically zero programming background. And so people are interested, like, how can I get to be like Alexander, right? I want to be able to port the Flutter thing, right? Where did he get started? How does he know what he knows, right? So yeah, what was your first language, right? So you looked at a computer from your dad's
Yes,
work,
it's
fell in love, and then
it's easier to ask which language I haven't worked with. A long time ago, I started working with Fortran, Basic, and Pascal. Uh, mm, if I think audience know what I'm talking about. It's old languages that currently used not very often. Then I developed in C++. I worked in in science and developed in C++. Then I worked with .NET Stack, to be more exact, with C Sharp, and worked with mostly with business logic. Then I switched to Java Stack and wrote microservices in Java. And at that time, I was involved in native Android development and switched to mobile from backend. And finally, on Google I/O 2019, I met Flutter and Dart, and I
girlfriend
realized
basically,
that
right?
it's mine.
That was your new girlfriend basically, right?
Yes, looks like. And since that time, I'm Flutter and Dart developer.
So okay, so like I mean, you went through so many different languages, right? So if you were to pick the technology that you really want to keep working with as much as possible, would that actually be Flutter or would it actually be something else?
Currently, I think Flutter is my my favorite technology, and I think Flutter has a nice future, and Flutter gives a lot of opportunity, and Flutter gives a lot of opportunity to people who want to become an IT because it's really really simple technology to start to do something. Probably from the beginning you couldn't do something deep. For example, working with your own widget based on render objects or make something on engine layer or so on, but you have a lot of great tools. You have a lot of already prepared widgets, and even you don't have IT background, you can do something soon. And it's
I,
great,
I
I
am
think.
kind of curious because you did say you already had Android development experience, right?
Yes.
But then when you say you saw Flutter, you really like kind of like we said, fell in love. You had a new girlfriend. Like, what was it that attracted you to it? Because of course I already know an Android developer, and I did try to talk to him about Flutter, and he is not interested. He thinks that it's just another thing, right? So as an Android developer, a native Android developer, what was it that made you say, you know what, this is something I think I'd rather work with rather than what I'm doing right now?
When I was Android developer, I had a problem. For example, I want to make mobile application, and I can do it in Android, but I want to have this application on both platforms because some people are using iPhone, and to solve this problem, it was necessary to look for iOS developer or start to learn iOS development and Objective C or Swift and so on. Uh, and Flutter can solve this problem much more simple than before. And I don't want to go back to Android development, but my Android knowledge helps me sometimes when it's necessary to do some custom platform behavior on Android side. And currently, I already have experience in Swift and iOS as well, and I can't do something on iOS side too. But before, Flutter was a key to do myself development for all platforms. Because for example, currently I could make native iOS application as well, but before Flutter I couldn't, because sometimes when you need to work with platform Flutter, you need to learn somewhere when application a bit more difficult than easiest.
Okay. So the thing that really reeled you in was definitely the cross-platform ability, right? That's the big feature.
Yes, and not cross-platform only, multi-platform. Currently, I can do websites. I I haven't did it. I haven't done it before even. I I didn't try to work with JavaScript, and I I could prepare website with some kind of template or something like else. And now I can do website from scratch. Probably, not probably. This is not an exact website, just a single page website, but sometimes single page is enough to do some kind of landing or something like this. But you can include their animations or wherever you want that you can't do using template.
Yeah, the animations in Flutter is really, really nice. And what I like about Flutter too is like when you animate something, they already have some simple ways to do some simple animations. right? Even like the hero widget is really cool that you can use that to when you transition pages. It's
Very,
very
very,
simple
very
to set up.
simple and very effective.
Yeah, and that's like when you see something like that, you're like, whoa, wow, that's really awesome. And when you implement that yourself, you're like, wow, I can do really cool stuff, man. And it's just one, it's one widget you use across with the same tag, right? But what Flutter does for you, all that heavy lifting is like, wow, this is amazing. And then if you're
Yes.
developing apps for your clients or even your own users, it's like they see that, wow, this is really cool.
Yes. And as I remember, the main topic of our discussion is Canvas, and we haven't thought about Canvas yet. Probably it's time to talk about Canvas.
Yeah, sorry, you seems like you have a lot of knowledge that I just want to pick out. So you're right. Thanks for keeping us on topic. Yeah, let's talk about Canvas, right? So obviously, I think when you first off with Flutter, you're just going to be building with widgets, simple widgets, and getting more and more complicated. And then I guess you must have somehow stumbled upon Canvas, right? So what got you interested in working with Canvas to begin with?
Uh, the first time I encountered Flutter Canvas was about probably 3 years ago when I was working on the one application named InfoGen. It's just something like the text analytics and sentiment analysis solution for that automatically finds actionable insight hidden in mountains of data. Just application can be helpful for people who want to be more informed to do something like strategic decision on investment and so on. And just what an investment. But we are talking not about this application. There were the task. It was necessary to implement an onboarding process so that the first launch on each screen that was opened for the first time hints of what it was would appear above the buttons and icons in turn. And standard tooltip widget didn't fit because of the design. It was without an arrow, and it was necessary to implement this tooltip with an arrow. That's why I had to make my own widget that draws a tooltip with an arrow using a custom paint widget, which actually works with the canvas. But by the way, now there are many ready-made solutions from the community to solve that problem. I mean, tooltip with arrow and so on. I would personally recommend the Popover package. It was made by our guys from the mobile people community, to be exact, by Sasha Prohorenko. Hello, Sasha, if you hear me. And how does it work? What is the canvas exactly? Really, this is just a Dart wrapper for the SK canvas from Skia. Skia, you know, this two-dimensional graphic engine with which Flutter works to render everything. And Skia has canvas. Canvas is just an interface for recording graphical operations one by one and creating picture object based on these operations. In other words, for custom drawing, the concept of canvas actually exists in many platforms, not only in Flutter. For example, in Android, because Android using ski as well. Everywhere you need the ability to draw custom two-dimensional graphic. You can meet something like Canvas. In Android, even the names of used class are the same, Canvas and Paint, because I think it's a Java wrapper on the same ski Canvas. iOS, for example, uses a different naming, but the essence is the same. Although Swift UI already has a struct with the name Canvas for this purpose. You can meet a Canvas everywhere, but we are talking about Flutter Canvas. The main idea is that we take a certain graphic context, which is named Canvas, and we can sequentially draw on it some kind of graphic primitives. I mean, points, line segments, paths, text as well. It's like a primitive. Geometric shapes, circles, squares, and if necessary, coloring them using paint object. And that's it. Moreover, the picture that we get as a result of sequence of these graphical primitives can be modified using some transformation methods like translate, scale, rotate, skew, or transform. And also Canvas has a clip region that can be modified with methods like clip rect, clip path. And finally, this primitives, set of transforms and clip can be saved and restored if you need. There are some methods like save layer, and restore methods. You can save current state and then restore it. State of Canvas, I mean. But with the help of graphic primitives, in fact, you can create incredible things. Since in fact you really control each primitive, and you can redraw and animate it, anything you want, and in the result you can get something really cool, because you're just drawing and you can draw something, then animate this thing, transform this thing, rotate and transform, rotate and scale, and working together with animation controller, you can get movie, for example, but without riff.
Okay. That's pretty interesting. So
And
Canvas is. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that you can work with Canvas in two ways. First way, it's I think the easiest and most common. Okay. Let's start again. You can with Canvas you can create your own custom widgets, and you can create custom widgets two ways. And I told before about the easiest way, the first one, and I used, for example, this way when I did it the first time. I mean custom paint widget. Flutter has from out of the box widget with name custom paint that give that gives an opportunity to work with canvas. You can just create your own custom painters that will work with canvas, and just attach them to custom paint, and after that custom paint will draw the pictures you need. I will I will attach a link to simple example in my repo. It's an example that I prepared for simple workshop to work with custom painter. And you can take a look how it works. And for example, some widgets from out of the box in Flutter are implemented this way. For example, progress indicator has a custom paint under the hood and work with it. And there is a second way, is a more complex case. You can create your own custom widget based on render object. Render object, so we have widgets, elements, and render objects. And render objects is an entity that working with rendering. And you have opportunity to create your own widget based on this render object. And there we also can access the canvas by overriding the paint method. And paint method has a parameter painting context. And canvas is a part of this context. And creating a custom widget in this way will give you more flexibility in painting and sizing your widget, but also more complexity. And also there are widgets from out of the box that created this way, and you can take a look how it works. For example, check the switch widget. And the advice, if you want to create your own widget based on render object, take a look how it was done by Flutter team. Because everything that was done by Flutter team usually perfect. And this way, this painting context is the same for all of your for all childs of your widget. For example, you have to remember about it when you create your own widget based on render object, and another one will be child of them. You just need to remember that canvas will be the same for both of them. And there you can use, for example, save and restore methods to help you with keeping canvas as you need. About tips, how to learn canvas if you are a beginner. There are a lot of examples of using canvas in the internet. I'll provide probably some links to useful articles and repositories to check. And I would recommend starting with a custom paint widget because it's really simple. And then, if everything will be fine with custom paint widget, you can try to create something based off render object. Just as I mentioned before, just read the Flutter source code for any widget that is similar to what you want to make, and copy it and change something, and you will get your own widget with your own canvas and so on. I think I don't know how I can say more about Canvas because it's a really powerful thing, but it's very simple thing. It's just thing you can use to draw your own your own things what you want to draw.
Yeah, definitely. I think it sounds like if you want to learn how to do it, just look at examples, right? I took some of the, as you're naming some widgets, I started copying and pasting those widget documentation into the show notes so we can give those to people. And I definitely put your GitHub in there because you have, I'm sure, a lot of stuff that's useful. Um, After this, if you want to write into the question sheet that I share with you some specific repositories that we should probably make sure. I mean, the Flutter engine, of course, also your project about the working with Custom Painter, I think is good. I remember you said that you also taught people how to use Custom Painter, right? You said you put on workshops about that. Has actually been pretty smooth process to actually teach people how to use it.
Uh, this workshop was recorded in Russian, unfortunately. I have no English version, but I have source code, and I think there are quite quite simple. Well, I can send the link and give me a second. Where is yes workshops, custom widgets, custom painter demo. That's it. Provide the link. It's just application with one button and one smile. You push the button and you have angry smile with red color. Push again and you have green face with smile and so on. And face with smile just painted by Custom Painter.
I'll have to take a look at that, and I'll definitely share that with people.
And a bit later, I will provide you more complicated repositories and articles, and you could attach them to the recording.
I will. I definitely will. Thanks so much for that. I want to ask you just a couple more questions as we're approaching the end of our time together. Um,
Yes, sure.
as somebody who's a native, like you work in different platforms, right? Obviously. When do you think Flutter is a good choice versus something else, right? Because there's definitely other solutions already out there, right? You said you can also do native application. So when would Flutter not be a good choice? And when would it be a good choice to use as a solution?
And it's a good question. First of all, yes, don't assume that Flutter is a silver bullet, perfect for any challenge. It's not true. Flutter is really handy, but sometimes you can do without native development. For example, if you when it comes to some kind of complex calculations on GPU level, for example, if you need to show how to say in English, some kind of graphic with a lot of calculation when you have axis x, axis y, and well, 100,000 of points there, and changing of this graphic will be not good in Flutter because it was necessary a lot of calculations, and these calculations will be done on UI layer in Flutter. You probably could move this calculation, for example, to isolate, but in this time you won't get real time because it will be delay between getting result. And that's just one example when Flutter is not good. For these things it's necessary to use native, I think, or native platform use. For example, you can do this natively and use platform view in Flutter, because the one of the maybe most great things of Flutter, it's interoperability between platforms, and you can do something on native, do something on Flutter and mix it. Sometimes it's not very easy, but if you can't do something with Flutter, you can do it in native and use it in Flutter. It's perfect. And for example, if you need very different UI for different platform, in this case you won't save a lot of time, because you will need to do different UI for different platforms, like natively. And if you have not a lot of business logic there, probably you don't need Flutter in this case. But for most part of cases that currently there are in mobile development, Flutter is perfect.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, I think I have heard that either calling Flutter to native or native. I think Flutter to native is actually not as good as calling native to Flutter, right? Something like that. I heard that calling one. I think embedding native view within Flutter. I think I saw in the documentation is not very performant, but maybe it depends on what you're doing.
You mean using Flutter part in native application? Or not? I missed something.
Before is that embedding native into a Flutter app is actually not so performant, though, as opposed to embedding Flutter within native.
There are some could be some delays, because native part and Flutter part are connected asynchronously, but sometimes you can't implement something in Flutter. For example, video, for example. Yes, all video players that we're using in Flutter is implemented that way. We have native player that covered by Flutter UI components, and we just see video stream in the native part.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or something. You know that Google Maps plugin is done by using platform view. It's a native part embedded in Flutter.
Yeah, but that definitely makes sense because it's pretty fluid, right? I can't imagine that being done within Flutter, but maybe I'm wrong. But okay.
Sometimes you can go another way.
Yeah. Okay. I am kind of curious though. What state management do you tend to use?
It's most the most often question. I think everybody want to talk about state management. I like the block concept. Yes, I started using it even before the appearance of the Felix Angelov package, and I still prefer to implement my own block based on streams because I can control everything that I want. But although the Flutter block library by Felix is very good, but nevertheless, different tasks require different solutions. Sometimes I use the Redux package by Brian Egan when I see that Redux is more suitable and it's necessary more strong flow. And if I can get by with a simple solution, then just use simple state management with a provider because it's the easiest way. MobX is also good, but I don't very like it because a lot of code generation, and any change you need to do some code generation, and if you want to debug something you have to deep dive in generated code, and I don't like this way. But MobX is very powerful state management as well. For some solution I think it's will be suitable, but I fan of block.
Have you ever played with RiverPod yet? Because that seems to be one of the most popular ones as of recently, RiverPod. Have you ever tried RiverPod yet? You ever tried RiverPod?
Riverpod. I pronounced it another way. Riverpod. Yes, I tried Riverpod because I was prepared to talk about state management for one of conference, and I did research about all of state management that already presents on the market. And yes, I checked Report. Report is nice solution. That looks like a provider, but without using of context, and you don't need a widget tree to use it. But I didn't use it in production. Just researched it. And you? Did you use it?
I actually use it in one project right now because I heard good things about it and I quite liked it. But I mean, the nice part is I find it very easy to change the scope, right? So you can use provider scope when you're writing tests. So that was important to me, is I wanted to be able to actually TDD a UI, and I found it pretty easy to do with a RiverPod. What I do right now when I create my apps, and I'm pretty happy with, is I use Git. So it's like the dependency injection, Git, with block. And so with that, that's how I tend to check my code, and I use block test, but I don't do any UI testing right now. So I'm thinking, I think I saw that with Git, you can actually do something similar to the provider scope where you can like rewrite how it looks up objects, but I haven't had a moment to play with it yet. But I think that's the next thing, is when I get some time, I'll probably try to start writing UI tests with block. Maybe just replace the block and then just send my own stream down, right? Just so I can have a try. And making sure that if I click this button, then an event comes in that I'm looking for with a certain data, things like that. As somebody else who uses block and likes block, we all know that Dart, when you have the double equals method, right, is going to look for by reference, right, not by value. So do you use equatable for your checking, or do you use something else? Because recently I've switched to use what is that called? I forgot the name of that one. It's done by Remy, the same guy who created RiverPod. he has a library for doing equality in generation. Oh, freezed.
For Freest, you mean? Yes, I use
Yeah, yeah,
Freest.
yeah. Use freezed. Okay.
Hmm.
All right. Yeah. Before I used equatable, and then now I
But
switched over to freezed. Yeah.
for, uh, equitable by Felix Angelov, as I remember as well. uh, but yes, Freest, in my opinion, a bit more suitable because the comparing is more complex, I think, and you don't need to add something. As I remember, when I use equitable, you need to extend your each class on equitable and add method or something like this to identify.
There's a property we have to add in what fields to use to check with, right? So that's why I'm
Yes.
pretty happy using freeze because now it generates all that for me. Which is kind of
Yes.
funny because once you're just complaining about like MobX, you have to use a lot of generators. Freeze, you have to use generators, right?
Yes, but freeze is just generators regarding mm, your entities. You can work with your entities and you can sure that if they're equals, it equals, and you can use mapping, but there is no logic. MobX, it's about some logic, and that's why I don't like to debug this generated code. When I debug code with Freest, I don't need to debug code generated by Freest because there are nothing special, nothing to check there.
My favorite thing about freeze is that it's really frozen, right? So I have to use copy with because yeah, there's too many times where this thing is editing that and that's editing that, and I don't know what's going on. And so having freeze, it's like, okay, as long as I'm pointing to that piece of data, and if that thing gets changed, at least everybody who's looking at that piece all will get updated, right? That's what I really love about it.
Yes, me too. It's very useful.
I think as somebody who's been working with Flutter and different technologies for a while, do you have any tips for new developers about how they can progress farther in their understanding and learning of Flutter?
Uh, don't be afraid and just start coding. More practice, more experience. And when you met some kind of problem, you have a lot of opportunities to solve it. A lot of documentations, a lot of articles, a lot of podcasts. Uh, for example, this podcast as well. The best source of knowledge, in my opinion, for beginners is a Flutter Point Dev site by Flutter team. Yes, and apart from it, there are a lot of article tutorials, answers, Stack Overflow, and so on. And don't forget about community. Flutter has a very strong community, and apart from Flutter community, a lot of GDG community, Google Developer Groups community.
I've seen a couple of groups on meetup.com, I think.
For example, I'm organizer of GDG Moscow group, and we often organize events and workshops dedicated to Flutter as well. Flutter study jams, for example. And I suppose you can just look around you and find your nearest chapter of GDG and check, and you can find people there who interested in Flutter as well, and talk with them and so on. And now in COVID time, we have a lot of online activities, online workshops, and so on. A huge amount of opportunities.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off for the day?
I think how I want to say the final phrase. Yes. I think Flutter is the future of mobile development, and learn it. Don't forget about native development, but I think the most part of usual application without difficulties will be implemented using Flutter, and it's very useful to learn it right now, because demand of Flutter specialist is growing every day, because more and more businesses understands that Flutter gives opportunity to save resources and start looking for Flutter specialist, and market doesn't have enough Flutter specialists, and demand is growing.
A very, very bold and very big statement you made, right? That the future is definitely Flutter. It's a pretty big statement.
It's just my opinion. Probably in the 5 years, somebody invent framework that will be better than Flutter. But in general, I think cross-platform in the future, and Flutter now is the best cross-platform.
I think that's true. In the immediate future, I think Flutter definitely is the best. Let's not say cross-platform. Let's say multi-platform, like you said, right? Best multi-platform solution out there. Okay. So if nothing else, then I think we can say goodbye, and I hope to have you back sometime soon.
Goodbye, everybody.
All right.